Greetings! Welcome back to another thrilling installment of The Rise of Endymion by Dan Simmons. I'm your intrepid narrator, Fraggoth, and today we're going to be... Oh, wait. I really have to get a proper title for these. Anyway, it messes up my entire spiel for rhythm. I'm just like... Anyway, I guess we keep calling these Fraggoth reads. I'll probably change that. Let's see. So previously on, Raul Endymion awakes. He's been mostly healed from his injuries received in the fight with Nemesis. And he learns via Rachel that everyone but Karel Shan, who is one of the people who defected with Father Captain Federico de Soya, everybody but him has survived. Karel Shan, unfortunately, died in the auto dock. Or dock in the box, whichever it is. And we never really knew him. Her, them. He also proceeds to score repeatedly, so to speak. Quite a bit of shagging occurs between him and Aenea. Moderately explicit shagging. And we also learn a bit more about all the things that we thought we knew or understood in the Hyperion Cantos, and how much of that is not necessarily true. We are rejoined by Colonel Fedman Kassad and Hetmastine, true voice of the tree, Hetmastine, and they ask a couple questions of Aenea. We learn that Colonel Kassad is kind of, sort of, will heaven be the Shrike, kind of, a little bit. Eventually, part of him, at any rate, which is a thing. Would have been nice for that to get fleshed out. Hetmastine's questions largely are unanswered. It's like, wasn't I dead? And he's like, well, you will be. Everybody dies. He's like, yeah, I know that, but how? And she's like, well, I can't tell you that. Spoilers. She gives a bit more of a detailed answer than that, but it is moderately evasive. Basically, it boils down to, hey, you are going to be the true voice of the tree of pain, yes. That is going to be the Yggdrasil, yes. And oh, by the way, we're going to wage this campaign against the Pax. And the Yggdrasil will basically be our flagship. And after that, there's more shagging with Raul, and just kind of generally learning about, what the Ousters are all about here. We get a bit of a taster of that. They're people. Shocker, Shocker. Big shot. They're people. Oh, the Pax don't like them? They're probably the good guys then. And it turns out, yeah, they basically are. They're just humanity taking a fairly different path, using gene editing and nanotechnology to adapt themselves to environments rather than adapt environments to themselves, sort of thing. Anyway, how many pages have I set aside for myself? Like 40? Give or take, yeah. Geez, how many are left? Good question, Frag. Yeah, we could bang this out in 3 installments, including today. That is possible. That is decidedly possible. Anyway, this one will have some math with mathematical equations, namely for velocity and a few other things, and I'm going to misread them horribly. So my apologies in advance to the mathy among you. What is the proper, when you're speaking it aloud, the proper enunciation of if you have not a... supertext number, like like squared, but the other one, the one that's down below. I can't remember how you're supposed to mention what that is. It has been so long since I had to do any of that, let alone talk about it. So there's going to be me faking it. I could honestly probably find some of these online if I had to. Anyway, I know the last one, more or less. Oh no, that one gets complicated too. Anyway, I hope you like calculus. I hope you like physics equations, because we're going to get a couple of them. I swear it's not going to be as bad as some of Greg Egan's novels, where he's like, here's the chart. Here's the chart, and here's the math for the chart. Have fun. And I'm like, I'm scared. Don't abandon me, Greg, no. One of the things I appreciate about Greg Egan is he does not treat his audience like an idiot. He assumes that if you don't know something, you'll look it up. Most of the time, he's right. Anyway, let's resume our read-through of the Rise of Endymion. Man, we are almost done with this puppy. To be honest, I'm pretty happy about that because it has been a while. It is a long one. The two books put together. I'll probably do a Greg Egan after this, instead of going right to the short story collection by Dan Simmons. I kind of want to let things, settle there. The short story doesn't have much bearing. It's just kind of like a distant sequel. It incorporates some ideas. He was like, oh, I wanted to get around to some of these in the series. Didn't really have time. There's also something about how he was going to use the plot that he was doing for an episode of Star Trek Voyager, but it didn't pan out because Star Trek Voyager. Basically, he was going to give Star Trek Voyager some artistic integrity, and they were like, nah, we're good. It actually would have worked as an episode, to be honest. So yeah, let's get crack-a-lackin' on chapter 26 in just a sec. Let me water up. "26. The next day, we took the consul's ship out toward the sun. I had awakened expecting to be feeling some sort of enlightenment. Oh, right, that's the other big thing that happened, is Raul has had communion with Aenea's blood. The next day, we took the consul's ship out toward the sun. I had awakened expecting to be feeling some sort of enlightenment, overnight satori from the communion wine, a deeper understanding of the universe at the very least, omniscience and omnipotence at best. Instead, I awoke with a full bladder, a slight headache, but pleasant memories of the night before. Aenea was awake before me, and by the time I came out of the toilet cubby, she had coffee hot in the brewing bulb, fruit in its serving globe, and fresh, warm rolls ready. "Don't expect this service every morning," she said with a smile. "Okay, kiddo. Tomorrow I'll make breakfast." "Omelette?" she said, handing me a coffee bulb. I broke the seal, inhaled the aroma, and squeezed out a drop, taking care not to burn my lips or to let the globule of hot coffee get away. "Sure," I said. "Anything you like."
Good luck in finding the eggs, she said, finishing her roll in 2 bites. This star tree is neat, but short on chickens.
Pity, I said, looking through the transparent pod wall, and so many places to roost. I changed tones to serious. Kiddo, about the wine, I mean, it's been about 8 standard hours, and...
You don't feel any different, said Aenea. I guess you're one of those rare individuals on which the magic doesn't work.
Really? My voice must have sounded alarmed, or relieved, or both, because Aenea shook her head.
Just kidding. About 24 standard hours. You'll feel something. I guarantee it.
What if we're, busy when the time comes? I said, wiggling my eyebrows for emphasis. The motion made me float free a bit from the stick-tight table.
Aenea sighed. Down, boy, before I staple those eyebrows in place.
I said, grinning at her over the coffee bulb. I love it when you talk dirty.
Hurry,
said Aenea, setting her bulb in the sonic washer bin and recycling the eating mat. I was content to munch my roll and look at the incredible view through the wall. Hurry? Why? Are we going somewhere?
Meeting on the ship, said Aenea. Our ship. Then we have to get back and see to the last provisioning of the Yggdrasil for departure tomorrow evening.
Why on our ship? I said. Won't it just be crowded compared to all these other places?
You'll see, said Aenea.
She had slipped into soft blue 0G trousers, pulled tight at the ankle, with a tucked-in white shirt with several stick-tight ceiling pockets. She wore gray slippers. I had gotten used to going barefoot around the cubby and in the various stems and pods.
Hurry, she said again. Ship's leaving in 10 minutes, and it's a long vine ride to the docking pod.
It was crowded, and although the internal containment field held the gravity to 1/6 G, it felt like a Jovian pull. It felt like a Jovian pull after sleeping in freefall. It seemed strange to be crowded in on one-dimensional plane with everyone, letting all that airspace overhead go to waste. On the library deck of the consul's ship with us, seated at the piano, on benches, in overstuffed chairs, and along hollow pit ledges, were the Ouster's Navsun Hamnim, Sistenge Cordwell, Sien Quintana Kaan resplendent in her feathers, the 2 silver, vacuum-adapted Ousters Palu Koror and Drivenge Nikagat. That's what went wrong last week, is they printed it as driven, period. So it should have been drive eng. Their name/titles make sense when you consider them in the context of people who were on, like, generation ships, colony seed ships, that were going the slow way. As well as Paul Ure and Am Chipeta. Het Masteen was there, as was his superior, Ket Rostein. Colonel Cassad was present, as tall as the towering Ousters, and so was the Dorje Famo, looking ancient and regal in an ice-gray gown that billowed beautifully in the low gravity, as well as Lomo, Rachel, Theo, Abetic, and the Dalai Lama. None of the other sentient beings were there. Several of us stepped out on the balcony to watch the inner surface of the star tree fall behind as the ship climbed toward the central star on its pillar of blue fusion flame. "Welcome back, Colonel Cassad," the ship said as we gathered on the library level. I raised an eyebrow at Aenea, surprised that the ship had managed to remember this passenger from the old days. "Thank you, ship," said the colonel. The tall, dark man seemed distracted to the point of brooding. Climbing away from the inner shell of the biosphere star tree gave me a sense of vertigo quite distinct from watching the sphere of a planet grow smaller and fall behind. Here we were inside the orbital structure, and while the view from within the branches of the star tree had been one of open gaps between the leaves and trunks,
Glimpses of starfields on the side opposite the sun and everywhere great spaces, the view from 100,000 clicks and climbing was of a seemingly solid surface, the huge leaves reduced to a shimmering surface. Looking for all the world like a great green concave ocean, and the sense of being in some huge bowl and unable to escape was almost overwhelming. The branches were glowing blue from the trapped atmosphere within the containment fields there, giving thousands of clicks of vinous wood and flickering leaves a sort of blue electric glow, as if the entire inner surface were charged with voltage. And everywhere was life and motion. Ouster angels with 100-click wings not only flitted among the branches and beyond the leaves, but were hurled deeper into space, inward toward the sun, more quickly outward past the 10,000-click root systems. A myriad of smaller life forms shimmered in the blue envelope of atmosphere. Radiant gossamers, fairy chains, parrots, blue arboreals, old earth monkeys, vast schools of tropical fish swimming along in zero-G, seeking out the comet-misted regions, blue herons, flights of geese and Martian brandyfowl, old earth porpoises. We passed out of range before I could categorize a fraction of what I was seeing. Farther out, the size of the largest life forms and swarms of life forms became apparent. From several thousand clicks up, I could see the shimmering herds of blue platelets, the sentient acrotali, traveling together. After our first meeting with the creatures from my cloud planet, I had asked Aenea if there were any more on the biosphere star tree than the two in the conference. "A few more," my friend had said. "About 600 million more." Now I could see the acrotali moving effortlessly on the air currents from trunk to trunk, hundreds of kilometers apart, in swarms of thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. And with them came their obedient servants, the sky squids and zeppelins and transparent medusae and vast, tendrilled gas bags similar to the one that had eaten me on the cloud world, but larger. I had estimated that original monster as perhaps 10 clicks long. These zeppelin-like work beasts must have been several hundred clicks long, perhaps longer when one factored in the countless tentacles, tendrils, flagella, whips, tails, probes, and proboscis that the things sported. I realized as I watched that all of the acrotali's giant beasts of burden were busy with tasks, weaving branches and stems and pods into elaborate biodesigns, pruning dead branches and city-sized leaves from the star tree, wrestling Ouster-designed structures into place, and hauling material from one part of the biosphere to another. How many Zeppelin things are the acrotali controlling on the star tree? I asked Aenea when she was free for a second. "I don't know," she said. "Let's ask Navson." The Ouster said, "We have no idea. They breed as needed for tasks. The acrotali themselves are a perfect example of a swarm organism, a hive mind. None of the disk entities alone is sentient. In parallel, they are brilliant. The sky squids and other ex-Jovian world creatures have been reproducing as needed here for more than 700 standard years. I would venture that there are several 100 million working around the biosphere, perhaps 1 billion at this point." I stared down at the tiny forms on the dwindling biosphere surface. 1 billion creatures, each the size of the Pinion Plateau on my homeworld. Farther out, and the gaps between the branches 1 million clicks overhead and 500,000 clicks underfoot became apparent enough. The section from which we had come was the oldest and densest, but far along the great inner curve of the biosphere there were gaps and divisions, some planned, others yet to be filled in with living material. But even here, space was busy and filled with motion, comets arcing between roots, branches, leaves, and trunks on precise trajectories, their gift of water being volatilized from the surface by Ouster-aimed and air-powered heat beams from the trunks and from genetically adapted reflective leaves, creating mirrors hundreds of clicks across. Once turned to water vapor, the great clouds drifted across the trailing roots and misted the billion square clicks of leaf surface. Larger than the comets were the scores of carefully placed asteroids and shepherd moons moving a few thousand or tens of thousands of kilometers above the inner and outer surface of the living sphere, correcting for orbital drift, providing tides and tugs to help the branches grow correctly, throwing shadow on the biosphere's inner surface where shade was needed, and serving as observation bases and work shacks for the countless Ouster and Templar gardeners who watched over the project from decade to decade and century to century. And now, a half a life minute and now, a half a light minute out and accelerating toward the sun as if the ship were searching for a Hawking Drive translation point, there appeared to be even more traffic in the vast hollow of the green sphere. Ouster warships, all obsolete by PAX standards, with Hawking Drive blisters or giant ram scoop containment fields, old-fashioned high-G destroyers and C-3 ships from a long-gone era, elegant sunjammer cargo craft with great curved sails of gleaming monofilm, and everywhere the individual Ouster angels, wings flapping and shimmering as they tacked in toward the sun or hurtled back out toward the biosphere. Aenea and the others stepped back inside to continue their discussion. The topic was important, still trying to find a way to stall the Pax from attacking, some sort of feint or distraction that would keep the massing fleet from hurling itself this way, but I had more important things on my mind. As Abetic turned to leave the balcony, I touched the android's right sleeve. "Can you stay and talk a minute?" "Of course, Endymion." The bloom-skinned man's voice was as gentle as always. I waited until we were alone on the balcony, the drone of conversation from within affording us privacy outside, and leaned on the railing. "I'm sorry we haven't had more chance to talk since arriving here at the Star Tree," I said. Abetic's bald scalp gleamed in the rich sunlight. His blue-eyed gaze was calm and friendly. "That's perfectly all right, Endymion. Events have proved quite hectic since our arrival. I do concur, however, that this artifact does cause one to find opportunities to discuss it." He waved his remaining hand at the huge curve of the star tree to where it seemed to fade away near the central sun's brilliance. "It's not the star tree or the Ousters I want to talk about," I said softly, leaning a bit closer. Abetic nodded and waited. "You were with Aenea on all the worlds between Old Earth and Tien Shan," I said. "Ixion, Maui Covenant, Renaissance Vector, and the others?" "Yes, Endymion. I had the privilege to travel with her during all the time she allowed others to travel with her." I chewed my lip, realizing that I was about to make a fool of myself, but having no choice. "And what about the time when she did not allow you to travel with her?" I said. While M. Rachel, M. Theo, and the others remained with me on Groombridge Dyson D," said Abetic, "we carried on with Aenea's work, Endymion. I was especially busy working on the construction of—" No, I interrupted. "I mean, what do you know about her absence?" Abetic paused. "Virtually nothing, Endymion. She had told us that she would be away for some time. She had made provisions for our employment and continued work with her students. One day she was gone, and she was to stay away for approximately 2 standard years." 1 year, 11 months, 1 week, 6 hours, I said. "Yes, Endymion, that is precisely correct." "And after she returned, she never told you where she had been?" "No, Endymion. As far as I know, she never mentioned it to any of us." I wanted to grab Abetic's shoulders, to make him understand, to explain why this was of life and death importance to me. Would he have understood? I didn't know. Instead, attempting to sound calm, almost disinterested, and failing miserably, I said, "Did you notice anything different about Aenea when she returned from that sabbatical, Abetic?" My android friend paused, not, it seemed, out of hesitation to speak, but as if laboring to remember nuances of human emotion. We left for Tien Shan almost immediately after that, Endymion, but my best recollection is that Aenea was very emotional for some months. Elated one minute, absolutely racked with despair the next. By the time you arrived on Tien Shan, these emotional swings had seemed to have abated. And she never mentioned what caused them? I felt like a swine going behind my beloved's back like this, but I knew that she would not talk to me about these things. No, Endymion, said the android. She never talked to me about the cause. I presumed it was some event or events she experienced during her absence. I took a deep breath. Before she left, on the other worlds, Amritsar, Patotha, any of the worlds before she left Groombridge Dyson D, had there been anyone? I don't understand, Endymion. Was there a man in her life, Abetic? Someone she showed affection for? Someone who seemed especially close to her? Ah, said the android. No, Endymion. There seemed to be no male who showed any special interest in Aenea, other than as a teacher and possible messiah, of course. Yeah, I said, and no one came back with her after the 1 year, 11 months, 1 week, and 6 hours? No, Endymion. I gripped Abetic's shoulder. Thank you, my friend. I'm sorry I'm asking these stupid questions. It's just that I don't understand. Somewhere there's a... Shit, it doesn't matter. It's just stupid human emotions. I turned to go in to join the others. Abetic stopped me with a hand on my wrist. Endymion, he said softly, if love is the human emotion to which you refer, I feel that I have watched humankind long enough during my existence to know that love is never a stupid emotion. I feel that Aenea is correct when she teaches that it may well be the mainspring energy of the universe. I stood and watched, gaping, as the android left the balcony and went into the crowded library level. They were close to making a decision. I think we should send the Gideon Drive courier drone with a message, Aenea was saying as I came into the lounge. Send it direct and within the hour. They'll confiscate the drone, said Sian Quintana Ka'an in her musical contralto, and it's the only ship we have left with the instantaneous drive. Good, said Aenea. They're an abomination. Every time they are used, part of the void is destroyed. Still, said Paul Ure, his thick Ouster dialect sounding like someone speaking through radio static, there remains the option of using the drone as a delivery system. To launch nuclear warheads or plasma weapons against the Armada? Said Aenea. I thought that we had dismissed that possibility. It's our only way of striking at them before they strike at us, said Colonel Kassad. It would do no good, said the Templar true voice of the star tree, Ket Rothstein. The drones are not built for precise targeting. An Archangel-class warship would destroy it in light minutes away from the target. I agree with the one who teaches. Send the message. Or will the message stop their attack? Said Sistenge Cordwell. Aenea made the little gesture I knew so well. There are no guarantees, but if it puts them off balance, at least they will use their instantaneous drive drones to postpone the attack. It is worth a try, I think. And what will the message say? Said Rachel. Please hand me that vellum and stylus, said Aenea. Theo brought the items and set them on the Steinway. Everyone, including me, crowded close as Aenea wrote. To Pope Urban XVI and Cardinal Lord Dusamy, I am coming to Pacem, to the Vatican. Aenea. There, said my young friend, handing the vellum to Navsun Hamnim. "Please set this in the courier drone when we dock. Set the transponder to carrying hard copy message, and launch it to Pachem system." The Ouster took the vellum. I had not yet developed the knack of reading the Ouster's facial expressions, but I could tell that something was giving him pause. Perhaps it was a lesser form of the same sort of panic and confusion that was filling my chest at the moment. "I am coming to Pachem." What the goddamn hell did that mean? How could Aenea go to Pachem and survive? She could not. And wherever she was going, I was certain of only one thing, that I would be by her side, which meant that she was going to kill me as well, if she was as good as her word, which she always had been. I am coming to Pachem. Was it just a ploy to deter their fleet? An empty threat? A way of stalling them? I wanted to shake my beloved until her teeth fell out, or until she explained everything to me. "Raul," she said, gesturing me closer. I thought that perhaps this was the explanation I wanted, that she was reading my expression from across the room and saw the turmoil within me, but all she said was, "Palu Koror and Drivenge Nikagat are going to show me what it means to fly like an angel. Do you want to come with me? Lomo's coming." Fly like an angel? For a moment I was sure that she was speaking gibberish. "They have an extra skin suit if you want to come," Aenea was saying, "but we have to go now. We're almost back to the star tree, and the ship will be docking in a few minutes. Hetmastine has to go on with the loading and provisioning of the Yggdrasil, and I have 100 things to do before tomorrow." "Yeah," I said, not knowing what I was agreeing to. "I'll come along." At the time, I was feeling surly enough to think that this response was a wonderful metaphor for my entire 10-year odyssey. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing or getting into, but count me in. One of the space-adapted ousters, Palu Koror, handed us the skin suits. I had used skin suits before, of course, the last time being just a few weeks earlier when Aenea and I had climbed Karel Shan, the great peak of the Middle Kingdom, although it seemed like months or years ago, but I had never seen or felt a skin suit like these. Skin suits go back many centuries, the working concept being that the best way to keep from exploding in vacuum is not a bulky pressure suit as in the earliest days of spaceflight, but a covering so thin that it allows perspiration to pass even while it protects the skin from the terrible heat, cold, and vacuum of space. Skin suits had not changed much in all those centuries, except to incorporate rebreathing filaments and osmosis panels. Of course, my last skin suit had been a hegemony artifact, workable enough until Radamanth Nemes had clawed it to shreds. But this was no ordinary skin suit. Silver, malleable as mercury, the thing felt like a warm but weightless blob of protoplasm when Palu Koror dropped it in my hand. It shifted like mercury. No, it shifted and flowed like a living, fluid thing. I almost dropped it in my shock, catching it with my other hand, only to watch it flow several centimeters up my wrist and arm like some flesh-eating alien. I must have said something out loud because Aenea said, "It is alive, Raul. The skin suit's an organism, gene-tailored and nanoteched, but only 3 molecules thick." "How do I put it on?" I said, watching it flow up my arm to the sleeve of my tunic, then retreat. I had the impression that the thing was more carnivore than garment. And the problem with any skin suit was that they had to be worn next to the skin. One did not wear layers under a skin suit. Anywhere. Uh-huh, said Aenea. "It's easy. None of the pulling and tugging we had to do with the old skin suits. Just strip naked, stand very still, and drop the thing on your head. It'll flow down over you, and we have to hurry." This inspired something less than great enthusiasm in me. Aenea and I excused ourselves and jogged up the spiral stairs to the bedroom level at the apex of the ship. Once there, we hurried out of our clothes. I looked at my beloved, standing naked next to the console's ancient, and quite comfortable, as I remembered, bed, and was about to suggest a better use of our time before the tree ship docked. But Aenea just waggled a finger at me, held the blob of silver protoplasm above her, and dropped it in her hair. It was alarming watching the silver organism engulf her, flowing down over her brown blonde hair like liquid metal, covering her eyes and mouth and chin, flowing down her neck like reflective lava, then covering her shoulders, breasts, belly, hip bones, pubis, thighs, knees. Finally, she lifted first one foot and then the other, and the engulfment was complete. "Are you all right?" I said, my voice small, my own blob of silver still pulsing in my hand, eager to get at me. Aenea, or the chrome statue that had been Aenea, gave me a thumbs up and gestured to her throat. I understood. As with the hegemony skin suits, communication from now on would be via subvocalization pickups. I lifted the pulsing mass in both hands, held my breath, closed my eyes, and dropped it on my head. It took less than 5 seconds. For a terrible instant I was sure that I could not breathe, feeling the slick mass over my nose and mouth, but then I remembered to inhale and the oxygen came cool and fresh. "Can you hear me, Raul?" Her voice was much more distinct than the hear patch pickups on the old suit. I nodded, then sub-vocalized. "Yeah, weird feeling." "Are you ready, Aenea, Endymion?" It took me a second to realize that it was the other adapted Ouster, Tree-Dyson-Sphere, on the suit line. I had heard his voice before, but translated via speech synthesizer. On the direct line, his voice was even more clear and melodious than the bird song of Sian Quintana Ka'an. "Ready," responded Aenea, and we went down the spiral stairs, through the throng, and out onto the balcony. "Good luck, Aenea, Endymion." It was Abetic speaking to us through one of the ship's comlinks. The android touched each of us on our respective silver shoulders as we stepped next to Koror and Nikagat at the balcony railing. Lomo was also waiting, his silver skin suit showing every ridge of delineated muscle on his arms, thighs, and flat belly. I felt awkward for a moment, wishing either that I was wearing something over this micro-thin layer of silver fluid, or that I worked harder at keeping in shape. Aenea looked beautiful, the body that I loved sculpted in chrome. I was glad that no one but the android had followed the 5 of us onto the balcony. The ship was a couple of thousand clicks. What? The ship was within a couple of thousand clicks of the star tree and decelerating hard. Palu Koror made a motion and jumped easily onto the thin balcony rail, balancing against the 1/6 G. Drive-Eng Nikagat followed suit, and then Lomo, then Aenea, and finally, much less gracefully, I joined them. The sense of height and exposure was all but overwhelming. The great green basin of the star tree beneath us, the leafy walls rising into the unblinking distance on all sides, the bulk of the ship curving away beneath us, balancing on the slim column of fusion fire like a building teetering on a fragile blue column. I realized with a sickening feeling that we were going to jump. "Do not worry, I will open the containment field at the precise instant you pass through and go to EM repulsors until you are clear of the drive exhaust." I realized that it was the ship speaking. I had no idea of what we were doing. "The suits should give you a rough idea of our adaptation," Palu Koror was saying. "Of course, for those of us who have chosen full integration, it is not the semi-sentient suits and their molecular microprocessors that allow us to live and travel in space, but the adapted circuits in our skin, our blood, our vision, and brains." "How do we—" I began, having some trouble vocalizing, as if the dryness in my mouth would have any effect on my throat muscles. "Do not worry," said Nikagat. "We will not deploy our wings until proper separation is achieved. They will not collide. The fields would not allow it. Controls are quite intuitive. Your suit's optical systems should interface with your nervous system and neurosensors, calling up data when required." "Data? What data?" I had only meant to think that, but the suitcom sent it out. Aenea took my silver hand in hers. "This will be fun, Raul. The only free minutes we're going to have today, I think. Or for a while." At that moment, poised on the railing on the edge of a terrifying vertical drop through fusion flame and vacuum, I did not really focus on the meaning of her words. Come, said Palukoror, and then leaped from the railing. Still holding hands, Aenea and I jumped together. Oh, Optical Antenna, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoy. She let go of my hand, and we spun away from one another. The containment field parted and ejected us a safe distance. The fusion drive paused as the five of us spun away from the ship. Then it relit, the ship seeming to hurtle upward and away from us as its deceleration outpaced our own. And we continued dropping. That sensation was overwhelming. 5 silver spread-eagled forms, separating farther and farther from each other, all plummeting toward the star tree lattice still several thousand clicks beneath. Then our wings opened. For our purposes today, the light wings need only be a kilometer or so across, came Palukoror's voice in my ears. Were we traveling farther or faster, they would extend much farther, perhaps several hundred kilometers. When I raised my arms, the panels of energy extruding from my skin suit unfurled like butterfly wings. I felt the sudden push of sunlight. What we feel is more the current of the primary magnetic field line we are following, said Palukoror. If I may slave your suits for a second. There. Vision shifted. I looked to my left to where Aenea fell, already several clicks away, a shining silver chrysalis set within expanding gold wings. The others glowed beyond her. I could see the solar wind, see the charged particles and currents of plasma flowing and spiraling outward along the infinitely complex geometry of the heliosphere, red lines of twisting magnetic field coiling as if painted on the inner surfaces of an ever-shifting chambered nautilus. All this convoluted, multi-layered, multicolored writhing of plasma streams flowing back to a sun that no longer seemed a pale star, but was the locus of millions of converging field lines, entire sheets of plasma being evicted at 400 kilometers a second and being drawn into these shapes by the pulsing magnetic fields in its north and south equators. I could see the violet streamers of the inward rushing magnetic lines weaving and interlacing with the crimson red of the outward exploding sheets of field current. I could see the blue vortices of heliospheric shockwave around the outer edges of the star tree, the moons and comets cutting through plasma medium like ocean-going ships at night plowing through a glowing phosphorescent sea, and could see our gold wings interacting with this plasma and magnetic medium, catching photons like billions of fireflies in our nets, sail surfaces surging to the plasma currents, our silver bodies accelerating out along the great shimmering folds and spiral magnetic geometries of the heliosphere matrix. In addition to this enhanced vision, the suit's opticals were overlaying trajectory information and computational data that meant nothing to me, but must have meant life or death to these space-adapted ousters. The equations and functions flashed by, seemingly floating in the distance at critical focus, and I remember only a sampling. GM3 MC over R squared equals MC V squared CIR over R, and P sub R equals L plus K, or 1 plus K. I'm not actually sure. Do we have a 1 later? It's an L. L plus K times SR over C, and K equals RA over RA plus A, and AS, long-ass hyphen, A3 equals LK times 6.3 times 10 to the 17th, R5 squared, M per second squared, over 2mr squared. And V1 squared plus delta V squared plus 2 delta V times VI squared plus VE squared to the half is greater than vi squared plus delta v squared plus 2 delta vvi. Even without understanding any of these equations, I knew that we were approaching the star tree too fast. In addition to the ship's velocity, we had picked up our own speed from the solar wind and the plasma stream. I began to see how these Ouster energy wings could move one out from a star, and at an impressive velocity. But how did one stop within what looked to be less than 1,000 kilometers?
"This is fantastic," came Lomo's voice. "Amazing."
I rotated my head far enough to see our flyer friend from Tien Shan far to our left and many kilometers below us. He had already entered the leaf zone and was swooping and soaring just above the blue blur of the containment fields that surrounded the branches and spaces between the branches like an osmotic membrane. How the hell did he do that? I wondered. Again, I must have subvocalized the thought, for I heard Lomo's deep, distinctive laugh, and he said,
"Use the wings, Raul, and cooperate with the tree and the eggs."
Cooperate with the tree and the ergs? My friend must have lost his reason. Then I saw Aenea extending her wings, manipulating them by both thought and the movement of her arms. I looked beyond her to the world of branches approaching us at horrifying velocity, and then I began to see the trick.
"That's good," came Dryvenge Nikagat's voice. "Catch the repelling wind. Good."
I watched the two adapted ousters flutter like butterflies, saw the torrent of plasma energy rising from the star tree to surround them, and suddenly hurtled past them as if they had opened parachutes and I was still in freefall. Panting against the skin-suit field, my heart pounding, I spread my arms and legs and willed the wings wider. The energy folds shimmered and expanded to at least 2 clicks. Beneath me, an expanse of leaves shifted, turned slowly and purposefully as if in a time-lapse nature hollow. I got lost there, my bad. Beneath me, an expanse of leaves shifted, turning slowly and purposefully, as if in a time-lapse nature hollow of flowers seeking the light, folded over one another to form a smooth, parabolic dish at least 5 clicks across, and then went perfectly reflective. Sunlight blazed against me. If I had been watching with unshielded eyes, I would have been instantly blinded. As it was, the suit optics polarized. I heard the sunlight striking my skin suit and wings, like hard rain on a metal roof. I opened my wings wider to catch the blazing gust of light. At the same instant, the ergs on the star tree below folded the heliosphere matrix, bending the plasma stream back against Aenea and me, decelerating both of us rapidly but not painfully so. Wings flapping, we passed into the bowering outbranches of the star tree while the suit optics continued to flow data across my field of vision. VF equals VC squared equals 2 times J minus GM star MC over RIMC, which somehow assured me that the tree was providing the proper amount of the sun's light based on its mass and luminosity, while the erg was providing just enough heliospheric plasma and magnetic feedback to bring us to near 0 delta V before we struck one of the huge main branches or interdicted the containment field. Aenea and I followed the ousters, using our wings in the same way they used theirs, soaring and then flapping, breaking and then expanding to catch the true sun's light, to accelerate again, swooping in among the outer branches, soaring over the leafy outer layer of the star tree, then diving deep among the branches again, folding our wings to pass between pods or deep among the I just read that line. Folding our wings to pass between the pods or deep among the branches. I just did it again. Folding our wings to pass between the pods or covered bridges out beyond the core containment field, swooping around busily working space squids whose tentacles were 10 times longer than the console's ship, now decelerating carefully through the leaf level, then opening our wings again to surge past floating schools of thousands of blue pulsing acrotale platelets, which seemed to be waving at us as we passed. There was a huge platform branch just below the containment field shimmer. I did not know if the wings would work through the field, but Palu Koror passed through with only a shimmer, like a graceful diver cutting through still water, followed by Drivenge Nikagat, then by Lomo, then Aenea, and finally I joined them, folding my wings to a dozen or so meters across as I crossed the energy barrier into air and sound and scent and cool breezes once again. We landed on the platform. "Very nice for a first flight," said Palu Koror, her voice synthesized for the atmosphere. "We wanted to share just a moment of our lives with you." Aenea deactivated the skin suit around her face, allowing it to flow into a collar of fluid mercury. Her eyes were bright, as alive as I had ever seen them. Her fair skin was flushed, and her hair was damp with sweat. "Wonderful!" she cried, and turned to squeeze my hand. "Wonderful! Thank you so much! Thank you, thank you, thank you, Freeman Nikagat, Free Woman Koror!" "It was our pleasure, Reverend One who teaches," said Nikagat with a bow. I looked up and realized that the Yggdrasil was docked with the star tree just above us, the tree ship's kilometer of branches and trunk mingling perfectly with the biosphere branches. Only the fact that the consul's ship had slowly docked and was being pulled into a storage pod by a worker squid allowed me to see the tree ship. Crew clones were visible, working feverishly, carrying provisions and Mobius cubes onto Hetmastein's tree ship, and I could see scores of plant stem life support umbilicals and connector stems running from the star tree to the tree ship. Aenea had not released my hand. When I turned my gaze from the tree ship hanging above us to my friend, she leaned closer and kissed me on the lips. "Can you imagine, Raul? Millions of the space-adapted Ousters living out there, seeing all that energy all the time. Flying for weeks and months in the empty spaces, running the bow-shock rapids of magnetospheres and vortexes around planets, riding the solar wind plasma shock waves out 10 AUs or more, and then flying farther, to the heliopause termination shock boundary 75 to 150 AUs from the star, out to where the solar wind ends, and the interstellar medium begins. Hearing the hiss and whispers and surf crash of the universe's ocean. Can you imagine?" P of I, or P not I, or P sub I. Thank you. So I was almost right with it at one point earlier on another book, and wrong now. That's okay. Thank you for telling me. I will remember this. I appreciate it.
Unfortunately, we are free of the math today. I think that's the last we're going to get of math.
No. Can you imagine? No, I said. I could not. I did not know what she was talking about. Not then. Abetic, Rachel, Theo, Kassad, and the others descended from a transit vine. Rachel carried clothes. I just lost my place. Rachel carried clothes for Aenea. Abetic brought my clothes. Ousters and others surrounded my friend again, demanding answers to urgent questions, seeking clarifications of orders, reporting on the imminent launch of the Gideon Drive drone. We were swept apart by the press of other people. Aenea looked back and waved. I raised my hand, still silver from the skin suit, to wave back, but she was gone. For giggles, I'll read the one of the math equations here. G m sub 3 m sub c over r squared equals m sub c v squared sub CIR. That's probably circumference. Over r. And p sub r equals L plus k S sub r over c. Something about the speed of light. The k1, k equals r sub a over r sub a plus a. That's I'm not sure what that's an equation for. K is usually... what? It's bumming me out that I can't remember more of my basic physics. Velocity and whatnot. I know the velocity one that they're showing there. That one's classic. That's a relative velocity equation. I couldn't math it out in my head right now, but I recognize it anyway. Delta V, etc. That evening, several hundred of us took a transport pod pulled by a squid to a site many thousands of clicks to the northwest above the plane of the ecliptic along the inner shell of the biosphere star tree. The voyage lasted less than 30 minutes because the squid took a shortcut, cutting an arc through space from our section of the sphere to the new one. The architecture of living pods and communal platforms, branch towers and connecting bridges on this section of the tree, while still so close to our region by any meaningful geography of this huge structure, looked different, larger, more baroque, alien, and the Ousters and Templars here spoke a slightly different dialect, while the space-adapted Ousters ornamented themselves with bands of shimmering color that I had not seen before. There were different birds and beasts in the atmosphere zones here, exotic fish swimming through misted air, great herds of something that looked like old Earth killer whales with short arms and elegant hands. And this was only a few thousand clicks from the region I knew. I could not imagine the diversity of cultures and life forms throughout this biosphere. For the first time I realized what Aenea and the others had been telling me over and over. There was more internal surface on the sections of the completed biosphere than the total of all the planetary surfaces discovered by humankind in the past 1,000 years of interstellar flight. When the star tree was completed, the internal biosphere quickened, the volume of habitable space would exceed all the inhabited worlds in the Milky Way galaxy. Someday I'll get around to reading Ringworld on stream. It's not a Dyson-Sphere, it's a compromise. And then he proceeded to make sequels because people kept calling him out for wrong math. He was like, oh no, I must amend this. That's almost the entire reason he made the sequels, by the way, was feedback being like, hey, these are wrong. These 3 things are wrong. Fix them. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll do that. But first, let's make Louis Wu a drug addict. We were met by officials, fated for a few moments on crowded 1/6G platforms among hundreds of Ouster and Templar dignitaries, then taken into a pod so large that it might have been a small moon. A crowd of several 100,000 Ousters and Templars waited, with a few hundred Seneschai Aluit and hovering crowds of Akrateli near the central dais. Blinking, I realized that the ergs had set the internal containment field at a comfortable 1/6 G, pulling everyone toward the surface of the sphere, but then I noticed that the seats continued up and over and around the full interior of the sphere. I revised my estimate of the crowd to well over 1 million. Ouster Freeman Navson Hamnim and Templar true voice of the Star Tree Ket Rosteen introduced Aenea, saying that she brought with her the message that their people had awaited for centuries. My young friend walked to the podium, looking up and around and down, as if making eye contact with every person in the huge space. The sound system was so sophisticated that we could have heard her swallow or breathe. My beloved looked calm. Choose again, said Aenea. And she turned, walked away from the podium, and went down to where the chalices lay on the long table. Hundreds of us donated our blood, mere drops, as the chalices of wine were passed out to the waiting multitudes. I knew that there was no way that 1 million waiting Ouster and Templar communicants could be... Yes, communicants. I knew that there was no way that 1 million waiting Ouster and Templar communicants could be served by a few hundred of us who had already received communion from Aenea, but the aides drew a few drops with sterile lancets, the drops were transferred to the reservoir of wine, scores of helpers passed chalice bulbs under the spigots, and within the hour, those who wished communion with Aenea's wine blood had received it. The great sphere began emptying. After her 2 words, nothing else had been said through the entire evening. For the first time on that long, endless day, there was silence in the transport pod traveling home. Home, back to our region of the star tree under the shadow of the Yggdrasil, destined to depart within 20 hours. I had felt like a fraud. I had drunk the wine almost 24 hours earlier, but I had felt nothing this day. Nothing except my usual love for Aenea, which is to say, my absolutely unusual, unique, totally without referent or equal love for Aenea. The multitudes who wanted to drink... Oh, whoops. My brain added a comma there. The multitudes who wanted to drink had drunk. The great sphere had emptied, with even those who had not come to the communion silent, whether with disappointment at my beloved's 2-word speech, or pondering something beyond and beneath that, I did not know. We took the transport pod back to our region of the star tree, and were silent except for the most necessary of communications. It was not an awkward or disappointed silence, more like a silence of awe bordering on fear at the terminus of one part of one's life and the beginning, the hope for a beginning, of another. Choose again. Aenea and I made love in the darkened living pod, despite our fatigue and the late hour. Our love-making was slow and tender and almost unbearably sweet. Choose again. They were the last words in my mind as I finally drifted, literally, off to sleep. Choose again. I understood. I chose Aenea and life with Aenea, and I believed that she had chosen me. And I would choose her, and she would choose me again tomorrow, and the tomorrow after that, and in every hour during those tomorrows. Choose again. Yes. Yes.
"27. My name is Jacob Schulman. I write this letter to my friends in Lodz. My very dear friends, I waited to write to confirm what I'd heard. Alas, to our great grief, we now know it all. I spoke to an eyewitness who escaped. He told me everything. They are exterminated in Chelmno, near Domby, and they're all buried in Rushal Forest. Zushal Forest. The Jews are killed in 2 ways, by shooting or gas. It's just happened to be thousands of Lodz Jews. Do not think that this is being written by a madman. A madman. Alas, it is the tragic, horrible truth. Horror, horror! Man, shed thy clothes, cover thy head with ashes, run in the streets, and dance in thy madness. I am so weary that my pen can no longer write. Creator of the universe, help us. I write the letter on January 19, AD 1942. A few weeks later, during a February thaw when there is a false scent of spring to the woods around our city of Grabov, we, the men in the camp, are loaded into vans. Some of the vans have brightly painted pictures of tropical trees and jungle animals on them. These are the children's vans from last summer when they took the children from the camp. The paint has faded over this past winter, and the Germans have not bothered to retouch the images so that the gay pictures seem to be fading like last summer's dreams. They're Polish. I can't do a Polish accent. My apologies. His name is Schulman. We'll take it. They drive us 15 kilometers to Chelmno, which the Germans call Kulmhof. Here they order us out of the vans and demand that we relieve ourselves in the forest. I cannot do it. Not with the guards and the other men looking on, but I pretend that I have urinated and button my pants again. They put us back in the big vans and drive us to an old castle. Here they order us out again, and we are marched through a courtyard littered with clothes and shoes and down into a cellar. On the wall of the cellar, in Yiddish, is written, "No one leaves here alive." There are hundreds of us in the cellar now, all men, all Poles, most of us from the nearby villages such as Grabov and Kolo, but many from Lodz. The air smells of dampness and rot and cold stone and mildew. After several hours, the light is waning. We do leave the cellar alive. More vans have arrived, larger vans with double-leaf doors. The larger vans are green. They have no pictures painted on their sides. The guards open the van doors, and I can see that most of these larger vans are almost full, each holding 70 to 80 men. I recognize none of the men in them. The Germans push us and beat us to hurry us in the larger vans. I hear many of the men I know crying out, so I lead them in prayer as we are packed into the foul-smelling vans. Shema Israel, we are praying. We are still praying as the van doors are slammed shut. Outside, the Germans are shouting at the Polish driver and his Polish helpers. I hear one of the helpers shout, "Gas!" in Polish, and there comes the sound of a pipe or hose being coupled somewhere under our truck. The engine starts again with a roar. Some of those around me continue praying with me, but most of the men begin screaming. The van starts to move, very slowly. I know that we are taking the narrow, asphalted roads that the Germans built from Chelmno into the forest. All of the villagers marveled at this, because the road goes nowhere. It stops in the forest, where the road widens so that there is room for the vans to turn around. But there is nothing in there but the forest, and the ovens the Germans ordered built, and the pits the Germans ordered dug. The Jews in the camps who worked on that road and who dug the pits out there, and who worked to build the ovens in the forest have told us this. We had not believed them when they told us, and then they were gone, transported. The air thickens. The screams rise. My head hurts. It is hard to breathe. My heart is pounding wildly. I am holding the hands of a young man, a boy, on my left, and an old man to my right. Both are praying with me. Somewhere in our van, someone is singing above the screams, singing in Yiddish, singing in a baritone that has been trained for opera. My God, why hast thou forsaken us? We have been thrust into the fire before, but we have never denied thy holy law. Aenea, my God, what? Shh, it's all right, my dear. I'm here. I don't... What?
My name is Karel Endymion, and I am the wife of Trorb Endymion, who died 5 local months ago in a hunting accident. I am also the mother of a child named Raul, now 3 Hyperion years old, who is playing by the campfire in the caravan circle as aunts watch him. I climb the grassy hill above the valley, where the caravan wagons have circled for the night. There are a few dry aspen along the stream in the valley, but otherwise the moors are empty of any landmarks except short grass, heather, sedge, rocks, boulders, and lichen. And sheep. Hundreds of the caravan's sheep are visible and audible on the hills to the east as they mill and surge to the sheepdogs here herding. Grandam is mending clothes on a rock outcropping with a grand view down the valley to the west. There is a haze over the western horizon that means open water, the sea, but the immediate world is bound about by the moors, the evening sky of deepening lapis, the meteor streaks silently crossing and crisscrossing that sky, and the sound of the wind in the grass. I take a seat on a rock next to Grandam. She is my late mother's mother, and her face is our face, but older, with weathered skin, short white hair, firm bones in a strong face, a blade of a nose, and brown eyes with laugh lines at the corners. "You're back at last," says the older woman. "Was the voyage home smooth?" "Aye," I say. "Tom took us along the coast from Port Romance and then up the Beak Highway, rather than paying the ferry toll through the fens. We stayed at the Benbroke Inn the first night, camped along the Suisse the second." Grandam nods. Her fingers are busy with the sewing. There is a basket of clothes next to her on the rock. "And the doctors?" "The clinic was large," I say. "The Christians have added to it since last we were in Port Romance. The sisters, the nurses, were very kind during the tests." Grandam waits. I look down in the valley to where the sun is breaking free from the dark clouds. Light streaks the valley tops, throws subtle shadows behind the low boulders and rocky hilltops, and sets the heather aflame. "It is cancer," I say. "The new strain." "We knew that from the Moor's Edge, Doctor," says Grandam. "What did they say the prognosis is?" I pick up a shirt. It is one of Trorb's, but belongs to his brother. Raul's Uncle Lay. I pull my own needle and thread from my apron and begin to sew on the button that Trorb had lost just before his last hunting trip north. My cheeks are hot at the thought that I gave this shirt to lay with the button missing. They recommend that I accept the cross, I say. There is no cure, says Grandam, with all their machines and serums. There used to be, I say, but evidently it used the molecular technology. Nanotech, says Grandam. Yes, and the church banned it some time ago. The more advanced worlds have other treatments. But Hyperion does not, says Grandam, and sets the clothes in her lap aside. Correct. As I speak, I feel very tired, still a little ill from the tests and the trip, and very calm, but also very sad. I can hear Raul and the other boys laughing on the breeze. And they counsel accepting their cross, says Grandam, the last word sounding short and sharp-edged. Yes, a very nice young priest talked to me for hours yesterday. Grandam looks at me in the eye. And will you do it, Cultrin? I'd return her gaze. No. You are sure? Absolutely. Trorb would be alive again and with us now if he had accepted the cruciform last spring, as the missionary pleaded. Not my Trorb, I say, and turn away. For the first time since the pain began 7 weeks ago, I am crying. Not for me, I know, but at the memory of Trorb, smiling and waving that last sunrise morn when he set out with his brothers to hunt salt bison near the coast. Grandam is holding my hand. You're thinking of Raul? I shake my head. Not yet. In a few weeks I'll think of nothing else. You do not have to worry about that, you know, Grandam says softly. I still remember how to raise a young one. I still have tales to tell and skills to teach, and I will keep your memory alive in him. You'll be so young when... I say, and stop. Grandam is squeezing my hand. The young remember most deeply, she says softly. When we are old and failing, it is the memories of childhood which can be summoned most clearly. The sunset is brilliant, but distorted by my tears. I keep my face half turned away from Grandam's gaze. I don't want him remembering me only when he is old. I want to see him every day, see him play and grow up. Do you remember the verse of Ryokan that I taught you when you were barely older than Raul? Says Grandam. I have to laugh. You taught me dozens of Ryokan verses, Grandam. The first one, says the old woman. It takes me only a moment to recall it. I say the verse, avoiding the sing-song quality to my voice, just as Grandam taught me when I was little older than Raul is now. How happy I am as I go hand in hand with the children to gather young greens in the fields of spring. Grandam has closed her eyes. I can see how thin the parchment of her eyelids is. You used to like that verse, Cultrin. I still do. And does it say anything about the need to gather greens next week or next year or 10 years from now in order to be happy now? I smile. Easy for you to say, old woman, I say, my voice soft and affectionate to temper the disrespect in the words. You've been gathering greens for 74 springs and plan to do so for another 70. Not so many to come, I think. She squeezes my hand a final time and releases it. But the important thing is to walk with the children now, in this evening's spring sunlight, and to gather the greens quickly for tonight's dinner. I am having your favorite meal. I actually clap my hands at this. The north wind soup? But the leeks are not ripe. They are in the south swards where I sent Lee and his boys to search. And they have a pot full. Go now, get the spring greens to add to the mix. Take your child and be back before true dark. I love you, Grandam. I know, and Raul loves you, little one, and I shall take care that the circle remains unbroken. Run on now. I come awake falling. I have been awake. The leaves of the star tree have shaded the pods for night, and the stars to the outsystem side are blazing. The voices do not diminish. The images do not fade. This is not like dreaming. This is a maelstrom of images and voices, thousands of voices in chorus, all clamoring to be heard. I had not remembered my mother's voice until this moment. When Rabbi Schulman cried out in Old Earth Polish and prayed in Yiddish, I had understood not only his voice, but his thoughts. I am going mad. No, my dear, you are not going mad, whispers Aenea. She is floating against the warm pod wall with me, holding me. The chronometer in my comlog says that the sleep period along this region of the biosphere star tree is almost over, that the leaves will be shifting to allow the sunlight in within the hour. The voices whisper and murmur and argue and sob. The images flit at the back of my brain like colors after a terrible blow to the head. I realize that I am holding myself stiffly, fists clenched, teeth clenched, neck veins straining, as against a terrible wind or wave of pain. No, no, Aenea is saying, her soft hands stroking my cheek and temples. Sweat floats around me like a sour nimbus. No, Raul, relax. You are so sensitive to this, my dear, just as I thought. Relax and allow the voices to subside. You can control this, my darling. You can listen when you wish, quiet them when you must. But they never go away, I say. Not far away, whispers Aenea. Ouster angels float in the sunlight beyond the leaf barrier sunward. And you have listened to this since you were an infant? I say. Since before I was born, says my darling. My God, I say, holding my fists against my eyes. My God. My name is Amnie Machen al-Atta, and I am 11 standard years old when the Pax comes to my village of Comriad. Our village is far from the cities, far from the few highways and skyways, far even from the caravan routes that crisscross the rock desert and the burning plains. For 2 days the evening skies have shown the Pax ships burning like embers as they pass from east to west in what my father says is a place above the air. Yesterday the village radio carried orders from the Imam at Al-Ghazali, who heard over the phone lines from Omar that everyone in the high reaches and the burning plains oasis camps are to assemble outside their yurts and wait. Father has gone to the meeting of the men inside the mud-walled mosque in our village. The rest of my family stands outside our yurt. The other 30 families also wait. Our village poet, Farid ud-Din Attar, walks among us, trying to settle our nerves with verse, but even the adults are fearful. My father has returned. He tells mother that the mullah has decided that we cannot wait for the infidels to kill us. The village radio has not been able to raise the mosque at Al-Ghazali or Omar. Father thinks that the radio is broken again, but the mullah believes that the infidels have killed everyone west of the burning plains. We hear the sound of shots from the front of the other yurts. Mother and my oldest sister want to run, but father orders them to stay. There are screams. I watch the sky, waiting for the infidel Pax ships to reappear. When I look down again, the mullah's enforcers are coming around the side of our yurt, setting new magazines in their rifles. Their faces are grim. Father has us all hold hands. God is great, he says, and we respond, God is great. Even I know that Islam means submission to the merciful will of Allah. At the last second I see the embers in the sky, the Pax ships floating east to west across the zenith so high above. God is great, cries Father. I hear the shots. Aenea, I don't know what these things mean. Raul, they do not mean, they are. They are real as any memories can be, my love. But how? I can hear the voices, so many voices. As soon as I touch one with my mind, these are stronger than my own memories, clearer. They are memories nonetheless, my love. Of the dead. These are, yes, learning their language. In many ways we must learn their language, Raul. Their actual tongues, English, Yiddish, Polish, Parsi, Tamil, Greek, Mandarin, but also their hearts, the soul of their memory. Are these ghosts speaking, Aenea? There are no ghosts, my love. Death is final. The soul is that ineffable combination of memory and personality which we carry through life. When life departs, the soul also dies, except for what we leave in the memory of those who loved us. And these memories, resonate in the void which binds. How? All those billions of lives, and thousands of races and billions of years, my love. Some of your mother's memories are there, and my mother's, but so are the life impressions of beings terribly far removed from us in space and time. Can I touch those as well, Aenea? Perhaps, with time and practice. It took me years to understand them. Even the sense impressions of life forms so differently evolved are difficult to comprehend, much less their thoughts, memories, and emotions. But you have done it. I have tried. Alien life forms like the Seneschai Aluit or the Akrateli? Much more alien than that, Raul. The Seneschai lived hidden on Hebron near the human settlers for generations, and they are empaths. Emotions were their primary language. The Akrateli are quite different from us, but not so different from the core entities whom my father visited. My head hurts, kiddo. Can you help me stop these voices and images? I can help you quiet them, my love. They will never really stop as long as we live. This is the blessing and burden of the communion with my blood. But before I show you how to quiet them, listen a few more minutes. It is almost leaf turn and sunrise. My name was Lenar Hoyt, priest, but now I am Pope Urban XVI, and I am celebrating the Mass of Resurrection for John Domenico Cardinal Mustafa in St. Peter's Basilica, with more than 500 of the Vatican's most important faithful in attendance. Standing at the altar, my hands outstretched, I read from the prayer of the faithful. Let us confidently call upon God our Almighty Father, who raised Christ his Son from the dead for the salvation of all. Cardinal Lordusamy, who serves as my deacon for this Mass, intones,
that he may return into the perpetual company of the faithful, this deceased Cardinal, John Domenico Mustafa, who once received the seed of eternal life through baptism, we pray to the Lord. That he who exercised the episcopal office in the Church and in the holy office while active may once again serve God in his renewed life, we pray to the Lord. That he may give to the souls of our brothers, sisters, relatives, and benefactors the reward of their labor, we pray to the Lord. That he may welcome into the light of his countenance all who sleep in the hope of the resurrection, and grant them that resurrection, that they may better serve him, we pray to the Lord. That he may assist and graciously console our brothers and sisters who are suffering affliction from the assaults of the godless and the derision of the fallen away, we pray to the Lord. That he may one day call into his glorious kingdom all who are assembled here in faith and devotion, and award unto us that same blessing of temporal resurrection in Christ's name, we pray to the Lord.
Now, as the choir sings the offertory antiphon and the congregation kneels in echoing silence in anticipation of the Holy Eucharist, I turn back from the altar and say, Receive, Lord, these gifts which we offer you on behalf of your servant, John Domenico Mustafa, Cardinal. You gave the reward of the high priesthood in this world. May he be briefly united with the company of your saints in the kingdom of heaven, and return to us via your sacrament of resurrection. Through Christ our Lord. The congregation responds in unison, Amen. I walk to Cardinal Mustafa's coffin and resurrection creche near the communion altar and sprinkle holy water on it while praying, Father, all-powerful and ever-living God, we do well always and everywhere to give you thanks, through Jesus Christ our Lord. In him who rose from the dead, our hope of resurrection dawned. The sadness of death gives way to the bright promise of immortality. Lord, for your faithful people, life is changed and renewed, not ended. When the body of our earthly dwelling lies in death, we trust in your mercy and your miracle to renew it to us. And so, with all the choirs of angels in heaven, we proclaim your glory and join them in their unending hymn of praise. The great organ in the basilica thunders while the choir immediately begins singing the Sanctus. Holy, holy, holy Lord, God of power and might. Heaven and earth are full of your glory. Hosanna in the highest. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. After communion, after the Mass ends and the congregation departs, I walk slowly to the sacristy. I am sad and my head hurts. Literally. My heart hurts, sorry. I am sad and my heart hurts. Literally. The heart disease has advanced once again, clogging my arteries and making every step and word painful. I think I must not tell Lord Ducemy. That cardinal appears as acolytes and altar boys help divest me of my garments.
We have received a Gideon drone courier, Your Holiness.
From which front, I inquire.
Not from the fleet, Holy Father,
says the cardinal, frowning a hard copy message that he holds in his fat hands. From where, then? From where, then? I say, holding out my hand impatiently. The message is written on thin vellum. I am coming to Pacem, to the Vatican. Aenea. I look up at my Secretary of State. Can you stop the fleet, Simone Augustino? His jowls seem to quiver.
No, Your Holiness. They made the jump more than 24 hours ago. They should be almost finished with their accelerated resurrection schedule and commencing the attack within moments. We cannot outfit a drone and send it in time to recall them.
I realize that my hand is shaking. I give the message back to Cardinal Lord Ducemy. Call in Marison and the other fleet commanders, I say. I tell them to bring every remaining capital fighting ship back to Pacem system. Immediately.
But Your Holiness,
says Lord Ducemy, his voice urgent.
There are so many important task force missions underway at the present.
Immediately, I snap. Lord Ducemy bows.
Immediately, Your Holiness.
As I turn away, the pain in my chest and the shortness in my breath are like warnings from God that time is short. Aenea, the Pope. Easy, my love, I'm here. I was with the Pope, Lenar Hoyt, but he's not dead, is he? You are also learning the language of the living, Raul. Incredible that your first contact with another living person's memories is with him. I think... No time, Aenea, no time. His cardinal, Lord Ducemy, brought your message. The Pope tried to recall the fleet, but Lord Ducemy said that it was too late, that they jumped 24 hours ago and would be attacking any moment. That could be here, Aenea. It could be in the fleet massing at Lacaille 9352. No! Aenea's cry brings me out of the cacophony of images and words and voices, memories and sense overlays, not banishing them completely, but making them recede something not unlike loud music in an adjoining room. Aenea has summoned a comlog from the cubby shelf and is calling both our ship and Nav's son Hamnim at the same time. I try to focus on my friend and the moment, pulling clothes on as I do so, but like a person emerging from a vivid dream, the murmur of voices and other memories is still with me. Father Captain Federico de Soya kneeling in prayer in his private cubby pod on the tree ship Yggdrasil. Only de Soya no longer thinks of himself as Father Captain, but simply as Father. And he is unsure of even this title as he kneels and prays as he has for hours this night, and longer hours in the days and nights since the cruciform was removed from his chest and body by the communion with Aenea's blood. Father de Soya prays for forgiveness of which, he knows beyond doubt, he is unworthy. He prays for forgiveness for his years as a Pax Fleet captain, his many battles, the lives he has taken, the beautiful works of man and God he has destroyed. Father Federico de Soya kneels in the 1/6 G silence of his cubby and asks his Lord and Savior, the God of mercy in which he had learned to believe and which he now doubts, to forgive him, not for his own sake, but so that his thoughts and actions in the months and years to come, or hours if his life is to be that short, might better serve his lord. I pull away from this contact, and with the sudden revulsion of someone realizing that he is becoming a voyeur. I understand immediately that if Aenea has known this language of the living for years, for her entire life, she has almost certainly spent more energy denying it, avoiding these unsolicited entries into people's lives, than mastering it. Aenea has irised an opening in the pod wall and taken the comlog out to the organic tuft of balcony there. I float through and join her, floating down to the balcony's surface under the gentle 1/10 G pull of the containment field there. There are several faces floating above the disky of the comlog, Hetmastines, Ketrostines, and Navsun Hamnims, but all are looking away from the visual pickups, as is Aenea. It takes me a second to look up at what she is seeing. Blazing streaks are cutting through the star tree past beautiful rosettes of orange and red flame. For an instant I think that it is just leaf-turn sunrise along the inner curve of the biosphere, squids and angels and watering comets catching the light the way Aenea and I had watering comets catching the light the way Aenea and I had hours earlier when riding the heliosphere matrix. But then I realize what I am seeing. Pax ships cutting through the star tree in 100 places, their fusion tails slicing away branches and trunk like cold, bright knives. Explosions of leaves and debris hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, sending earthquake tremors through the branch and pod and balcony on which we stand. Bright confusion. Energy lances leaping through space, visible because of the billions of particles of escaping atmosphere, pulverized organic matter, burning leaves, and Ouster and Templar blood. Lances cutting and burning everything they touch. More explosions blossom outward within a few kilometers. The containment field still holds, and sound pounds us back against the pod wall that ripples like the flesh of an injured beast. Aenea's comlog goes off at the same instant the star tree curve above us bursts into flame and explodes into silent space. There are shouts and screams and roars audible, but I know that within seconds the containment field must fail, and Aenea and I will be sucked out into space with the other tons of debris flying past us. I try to pull her back into the pod, which is sealing itself in a vain attempt to survive. "No, Raul! Look!" I look to where she points. Above us, then beneath us, around us, the star tree is burning and exploding, vines and branches snapping, Ouster angels consumed in flame, 10-click worker squids imploding, tree ships burning as they attempt to get underway. "They're killing the eggs!" shouts Aenea above the wind roar and explosions. I pound on the pod wall, shouting commands. The door irises open for just a second, but long enough for me to pull my beloved inside. There is no shelter here. The plasma blasts are visible through the polarized pod walls. Aenea has pulled her pack out of the cubby and tugged it on. I grab mine, thrust my sheath knife in my belt, as if it would help fight off the marauders. "We have to get to the Yggdrasil!" cries Aenea. We kick off to the stemway wall, but the pod will not let us out. There is a roaring through the pod's hull. "Stemway's breached!" gasps Aenea. She still carries the comlog. I see that it is the ancient one from the consul's ship, and is calling up data from the Star Tree grid. "Bridges are out. We have to get to the tree ship." I look through the wall. Orange blossoms of flame. The Yggdrasil is 10 clicks up, and inner surface east of us. With the swaying bridges and stemways gone, it might as well be 1,000 light-years away. "Send the ship for us," I say. "The consul's ship." Aenea shakes her head. "Hetmastine is getting the Yggdrasil underway now. No time to undock our ship. We have to be there in the next 3 or 4 minutes, or... What about the Ouster skin suits? We can fly over." It is my turn for head shaking. They're not here. When we got out of them at the landing platform, I had Betic carry both of them to the tree ship. The pod shakes wildly, and Aenea turns away to look. The pod wall is a bright red, melting. I pull open my storage cubby, throw clothes and gear aside, and pull out the one extraneous artifact I own, tugging it out of its leather storage tube. Father Captain de Soya's gift. I tap the activator threads. The hawking mat stiffens and hovers in 0G. The EM field around this section of the star tree is still intact. "Come on!" I shout as the wall melts. I pull my beloved onto the hawking mat. We are swept out through the fissure, into vacuum and madness. '28. The erg-folded magnetic fields were still standing, but strangely scrambled. Instead of flying along and above the boulevard-wide swath of branch toward the Yggdrasil, the hawking mat wanted to align itself at right angles to the branch, so that our faces seemed to be pointing down as the mat rose like an elevator through shaking branches, dangling bridges, severed stemways, globes of flame, and hordes of ousters leaping off into space to do battle and die. As long as we made progress toward the tree ship, I let the hawking mat do what it wanted. There were bubbles of containment field atmosphere remaining, but most of the erg fields had died along with the ergs who maintained them. Despite multiple redundancies, air was either leaking or explosively decompressing all along this region of the star tree. We had no suits. What I had remembered in the pod at the last moment was that the ancient hawking mat had its own low-level field for holding passengers or thin air in. Sorry, it doesn't say thin air. The ancient hawking mat had its own low-level field for holding passengers or air in. It was never meant as a long-term pressurization device, but we had used it 9 years ago on the unnamed jungle planet when we'd flown too high to breathe, and I hoped the systems were still working. They still worked, at least after a fashion. As soon as we were out of the pod and rising like a parawing through the chaos, the hawking mat's low-level field kicked in. I could almost feel the thin air leaking out, but I told myself that it should last us the length of time it would take to reach the Yggdrasil. We almost did not reach the Yggdrasil. It was not the first space battle I had witnessed. Aenea and I had sat on the high platform of the temple hanging in air not that many standard days, eons ago. Yes, that's what it says. Aenea and I had sat on the high platform of the temple hanging in air not that many standard days, eons ago, and watched the light show in cislunar space as the Pax task force had destroyed Father de Soya's ship. But this was the first space battle I had seen where someone was trying to kill me. Where there was air, the noise was deafening. Explosions, implosions, shattering trunks and stemways, rupturing branches and dying squids, the howl of alarms and babble and squeal of comlogs and other communicators. Where there was vacuum, the silence was even more deafening. Ouster and Templar bodies being blown noiselessly into space, women and children, warriors unable to reach their weapons or battle stations, robed priests of the Muir tumbling toward the sun while wrapped in the ultimate indignity of violent death. Flames with no crackling, screams with no sound, cyclones with no windrush warning. Aenea was huddled over Ciri's ancient comlog as we rose through the maelstrom. I saw Sistenge Cordwell shouting from the tiny holo-display above the disky, and then Kent Quinkent and Shan Quintana Ka'an speaking earnestly. I was too busy guiding the hawking mat to listen to their desperate conversations. I could no longer see the fusion tails of the Pax Fleet Archangels, only their lances cutting through gas clouds and debris fields, slicing the star tree like scalpels through living flesh. The great trunks and winding branches actually bled, their sap and other vital fluids mixing with the kilometers of fiber-optic vine and Ouster blood as they exploded into space or boiled away in vacuum. A 10-click worker squid was sliced through and then sliced through again as I watched, its delicate tentacles spasming in a destructive dance as it died. Ouster angels took flight by the thousands and died by the thousands. A tree ship tried to get underway and was lanced through in seconds, its rich oxygen atmosphere igniting within the containment field, its crew dying in the time it took for the energy globe to fill with swirling smoke. "Not the Yggdrasil! Not the Yggdrasil!" shouted Aenea. I nodded. The dying tree ship had been coming from Sphere North, but the Yggdrasil should be close now, a click or less above us along the vibrating, splintering branch. Unless I had taken a wrong turn, or unless it had already been destroyed, or unless it had left without us. "I talked to Hetmastine!" Aenea shouted. We were in a globe of escaping air now, and the din was terrible. "Only about 300 of the 1,000 are aboard." "All right," I said. I had no idea what she was talking about. What 1,000? No time to ask. I caught a glimpse of the deeper green of a tree ship a click or more above us and to the left, on another branch helix altogether, and swept the hawking mat in that direction. If it was not the Yggdrasil, we would have to seek shelter there anyway. The Star Tree EM fields were failing, the hawking mat losing energy and inertia. The EM field failed. The hawking mat surged a final time and then began tumbling in the blackness between shattered branches, a kilometer or more from the nearest burning stemways. Far below and behind us I could see the cluster of environment pods from which we had come. They were all shattered, leaking air and bodies, the pod stems and connecting branches writhing in blind Newtonian response. "That's it," I said, my voice low because there was no more air or noise outside our failing bubble of energy. The hawking mat had been designed 7 centuries ago to seduce a teenage niece into loving an old man, not to keep its flyers alive in outer space. "We tried, kiddo." I moved back from the flight threads and put my arm around Aenea. "No," said Aenea, rejecting not my hug, but the death sentence. She gripped my arm so fiercely that her fingers sank into the flesh of my bicep. "No, no," she said to herself, and tapped the comlog disk key. Hetmastine's cowled face appeared against the tumbling starfield. "Yes," he said, "I see you." The huge tree ship now hung 1,000 meters above us, a single great ceiling of branches and leaves green behind the flickering violet containment field, the bulk of it slowly separating from the burning star tree. There was a sudden, violent tug, and for a second I was sure that one of the Archangel lances had found us. "The ergs are pulling us in," said Aenea, still grasping my arm. "Ergs?" I said. "I thought a tree ship only had one erg aboard to handle the drive and fields." "Usually they do," said Aenea. "Sometimes two if it's an extraordinary voyage. Into the outer envelope of a star, for instance, or through the shockwave of a binary's heliosphere." "So there are 2 aboard the Yggdrasil?" I said, watching the tree grow and fill the sky. Plasma explosions unfolded silently behind us. "No," said Aenea, "there are 27. The extended field pulled us in. Up rearranged itself and became down. We were lowered onto a high deck, just beneath the bridge platform near the crown of the tree ship. Even before I tapped the flight threads to collapse our own puny containment field, Aenea was scooping up her comlog and backpack and was racing toward the stairway. I rolled the hawking mat neatly, shoved it into its leather carrier, flung the tube on my back, and rushed to keep up.
Only the Templar tree ship captain Hetmastine and a few of his lieutenants were on the Crown Bridge, but the platforms and stairways beneath the bridge level were crowded with people I knew and did not know. Rachel, Theo, Abetic, Father DeSoya, Sergeant Gregorius, Lomo Dondrub, and the dozens of other familiar refugees from Tien Shan, but there were also scores of other non-Ouster, non-Templar humans, men, women, and children whom I had not seen previously. Refugees fleeing 100 Pax worlds, picked up by Father Captain DeSoya in the Raphael over the past few years, said Aenea. We'd expected hundreds more to arrive today before departure, but it's too late now. I followed her up to the bridge level. Hetmastine stood on the locus of a circle of organic control... Hetmastine stood at the locus of a circle of organic control diskeys, displays from the fiber-optic nerves running throughout the ship, holodisplays from onboard, astern, and ahead of the tree ship, a communicator nexus to put him in touch with the Templars standing duty with the Ergs, in the Singularity Containment Core, at the drive routes, and elsewhere, and the central holo-simulacrum of the tree ship itself, which he could touch with his long fingers to call up interactives or change headings. The Templar looked up as Aenea walked quickly across the sacred bridge toward him. His countenance, shaped from old Earth Asian stock, was calm beneath his cowl. "I am pleased that you are not left behind, one who teaches," he said, dryly. "Where do you wish us to go?" "Out system," said Aenea without hesitation. Hetmastine nodded. "We will draw fire, of course. The Pax fleet firepower is formidable." Aenea only nodded. I saw the tree ship simulacrum turning slowly and looked up to see the starfield rotating above us. We had moved in-system only a few 100 kilometers and were now turning back toward the battered inner surface of the biosphere star tree. Where our meeting and environment pods had been, there was now a ragged hole in the braided branches. All across the thousands of square clicks of this region were gaping wounds and denuded branches. The Yggdrasil moved slowly through billions of tumbling leaves, those still in containment field atmosphere burning brightly and painting the containment field perimeter gray with ash, as the tree ship returned to the sphere wall and carefully passed through. Emerging from the far side and picking up speed as the erg-controlled fusion drive flared, we could see even more of the battle now. Space here was a myriad of winking pinpoints of light, fiery sparks here appearing as defensive containment fields came alight under lance attack, countless thermonuclear and plasma explosions, the drive tails of missiles, hyperkinetic weapons, small attack craft, and archangels. The curving away outer surface of the star tree looked like a fibrous volcano world erupting with flames and geysers of debris. Watering comets and shepherd asteroids, knocked from their perfect balancing act by Pax weapon blasts, tore through the star tree like cannonballs through kindling. Hetmastine called up tactical holos, and we stared at the image of an entire biosphere, pocked now with 10,000 fires, many individual conflagrations as large as my homeworld of Hyperion, and 100,000 visible rents and tears in the sphere fabric that had taken almost 1,000 years to weave. There were thousands of underdrive objects being plotted on the radar and deep-distance sensors, but fewer each second as the powerful archangels picked off Ouster ram scouts, torch ships, destroyers, and tree ships with their lances at distances of several AUs. Millions of space-adapted Ousters threw themselves at the attackers, but they died like moths in a flamethrower. Lomo Dondrub strode onto the bridge. He was wearing an Ouster skin suit and carrying a long Class 4 assault weapon. "Aenea, where the goddamn hell are we going?" "Away," said my beloved. "We have to leave, Lomo." The flyer shook his head. "No, we don't. We have to stay and fight. We can't just abandon our friends to these Pax carrion birds." "Lomo," said Aenea, "we can't help the star tree. I have to leave here in order to fight the Pax." "Run again if you have to." said. Run again if you have to, said Lomo, his handsome features contorted by rage and frustration. He molded the silvery skin suit cowl up over his head. I am going to stay and fight. They'll kill you, my friend, said Aenea. You can't fight Archangel-class starships. Watch me, said Lomo, the silvery suit covering everything but his face now. He shook my hand. Good luck, Raul. And to you, I said, feeling my throat tighten and face flush as much from my own shame at fleeing as from bidding farewell to this brave man. Aenea touched the powerful silver arm. Lomo, you can help the fight more if you come with us. Lomo Dondrub shook his head and lowered the fluid cowl. The audio pickups sounded metallic as they spoke for him. Good luck to you, Aenea. May God and the Buddha help you. May God and the Buddha help us all. He stepped to the edge of the platform and looked back at Het Mastine. The Templar nodded, touched the control simulacrum near the crown of the tree, and whispered into one of the fiber threads. I felt gravity lessen. The outer field shimmered and shifted. Lomo was lifted, turned, and catapulted out into space beyond our branches and air and lights. I saw his silver wings unfold, saw the light fill his wings, and watched him form up with a score of other Ouster angels carrying their puny weapons and riding sunlight toward the nearest archangel. Others were coming onto the bridge now. Rachel, Theo, the Dorje Famo, Father de Soya and his sergeant, A. Betic, the Dalai Lama, but all held back, keeping a respectful distance from the busy Templar captain. They've acquired us, said Het Mastine. Firing! The containment field exploded red. I could hear the sizzling. It was as if we had fallen into the heart of a star. Displays flickered. Holding, said the true voice of the tree, Het Mastine. Holding! He meant the defensive fields, but the Pack's ships were also holding, maintaining their energy lance fire even as we accelerated out system. Except for the display hollows, there was no sign of our movement. No stars visible, only the crackling, hissing, boiling ovoid of destructive energy bubbling and slithering a few dozen meters above and around us. What is our course, please? Asked Het Mastine of Aenea. My friend touched her forehead briefly as if tired or lost. Just out where we can see the stars. We will never reach a translation point while under this severity of attack, said the Templar. I know, said Aenea. Just out where I can see the stars. Het Mastine looked up at the inferno above us. We may never see the stars again. We have to, said Aenea simply. There was a sudden flurry of shouts. I looked up at where the commotion was centered. There were only a few small platforms above the control bridge, tiny structures looking like crow's nests on a holodrama pirate ship, or like a treehouse I had seen once in the Hyperion fens, and it was on one of these that the figure stood. Crew clones were shouting and pointing. Het Mastine peered up toward the tiny platform 15 meters above us and turned to Aenea. The Lord of Pain rides with us. I could see the colors from the inferno beyond the containment field reflecting on the Shrike's forehead and chest carapace. I thought it died on Tian Shan, I said. Aenea looked more weary than I had ever seen her. The thing moves through time more easily than we move through space, Raul. It may have died on Tian Shan. It may die 1,000 years hence in a battle with Colonel Kassad. It may not be capable of dying. We will never know. As if her use of his name had summoned him, Colonel Fedman Kassad came up the stairs to the bridge platform. The colonel was in archaic hegemony-era battle dress and was carrying the assault rifle I had once seen in the consul's ship armory. He stared at the Shrike like a man possessed. I just lost my place really spectacularly. He stared at the Shrike like a man possessed. "Can I get up there?" Cassad asked the Templar captain. Still absorbed with issuing commands and monitoring displays, Het Mastine pointed to some ratlines and rope ladders that rose to the highest platform. "No shooting on this tree ship," Het Mastine called after the colonel. Cassad nodded and began climbing. The rest of us turned our attention back to the simulacra displays. There were at least 3 archangels directing some of their fire at us from distances of less than 1,000,000 clicks. They would take turns lancing us, each then directing some of its fire at other targets. But our odd refusal to die seemed to increase their anger at us, and the lances would return, creeping across the 4 to 10 light seconds and exploding on the containment field above us. One of the ships was about to pass around the curve of the blazing star tree, but the 2 others were still decelerating in system toward us with clear fields of fire. "Missiles launched against us," said one of the captain's Templar lieutenants in a voice no more excited than I would use to announce the arrival of dinner. 2, 4, 9, sublight, presumably plasma warheads. "Can we survive that?" asked Theo. Rachel had walked over to watch the colonel climb toward the Shrike. Het Mastine was too occupied to answer, so Aenea said, "We don't know. It depends on the binders, the ergs." 60 seconds to missile impact," said the same Templar lieutenant in the same flat tones. Het Mastine touched a comm wand. His voice sounded normal, but I realized that it was being amplified all over the click-long tree ship. "Everyone will please shield their eyes and avoid looking toward the field. The binders will polarize the flash as much as possible, but please do not look up. May the peace of the Muir be with us." I looked at Aenea. "Kiddo, does this tree ship carry weapons?" "No," she said. Her eyes looked as weary as her voice had sounded. "So we're not going to fight? Just run?" "Yes, Raul." I ground my molars. "Then I agree with Lomo," I said. "We've run too much. It's time to help our friends here. Time to—" At least 3 of the missiles exploded. Later, I recall the light so blinding that I could see Aenea's skull and vertebrae through her skin and flesh, but that must be impossible. There was a sense of falling, of the bottom falling out of everything. And then the 1/6 G field was restored. A subsonic rumble made my teeth and bones hurt. I blinked away retinal afterimages. Aenea's face was still before me, her cheeks flushed and sweaty, her hair pulled back by a hastily tied band, her eyes tired but infinitely alive, her forearms bare and sunburned. And in a thick moment of sentimentality, I thought that it would not have been unthinkable to die like that, with Aenea's face seared into my soul and memory. 2 more plasma warheads made the tree ship shudder. Then 4 more. "Holding," said Het Mastine's lieutenant. "All fields holding." Lomo and Raul are right, Aenea," said the Dorje Famo, stepping forward with regal grace in her simple cotton robe. "You have run away from the packs for years. It is time to fight them. Time for all of us to fight them." I was staring at the old woman with something close to rude intensity. I had realized that there was an aura about her. No, wrong word, too mystical, but a feeling of strong color emanating from her, a deep carmine as strong as the Thunderbolt Sow's personality. I also realized that I had been noticing that with everyone on the platform that evening, the bright blue of Lomo's courage, the golden confidence of Het Mastine's command, the shimmering violet of Colonel Cassad's shock at seeing the Shrike. And I wondered if this was some artifact of learning the language of the living. Or perhaps it was a result of the overload of light from the plasma explosions. Whatever it was, I knew that the colors were not real. I was not hallucinating, and my vision was not clouded. But I also thought that I knew that my mind was making these connections, these shorthand glimpses into the true spirit of the person, on some level below and above sight.
and I knew that the colors surrounding Aenea covered the spectrum and beyond, a glow so pervasive that it filled the tree ship as surely as the plasma explosions filled the world outside it. Father de Soya spoke. "No, ma'am," he said to the Dorje Famo, his voice soft and respectful. "Lomo and Raul are not correct. In spite of all of our anger and our wish to strike back, Aenea is correct. Lomo may learn, if he lives, that what we all will learn if we live. That is, after communion with Aenea, we share the pain of those we attack. Truly share it. Literally share it. Physically share it. Share it as part of having learned the language of the living." The Dorje Famo looked down at the shorter priest.
"I know this is true, Christian, but this does not mean that we cannot strike back when others hurt us."
She swept one arm upward to include the slowly clearing containment field and the star field of fusion trails and burning embers beyond it.
"These Pax monsters are destroying one of the greatest achievements of the human race. We must stop them."
"Not now," said Father de Soya. "Not by fighting them here. Trust Aenea." The giant named Sergeant Gregorius stepped into the circle.
"Every fibre of my being, every moment of my training, every scar from my years of fighting, everything urges me to fight now," he growled. "But I trusted my captain. Now I trust him as my priest. And if he says we must trust the young woman, then we must trust her."
Hetmastine held up a hand. The group fell into silence.
"This argument is a waste of time. As the one who teaches told you, the Yggdrasil has no weapons and the ergs are only for defense. But they cannot phase shift the fusion drive while providing this level of shield. Effectively, we have no propulsion. We are drifting on our former course only a few light minutes beyond our original position, and 5 of the Archangels have changed course to intercept us."
The Templar turned to face us.
"Please, everyone except the revered one who teaches and her tall friend Raul, please leave the bridge platform and wait below."
The others left without another word. I saw the direction of Rachel's gaze before she turned away, and I looked up. Colonel Cassad was at the top crow's nest, standing next to the Shrike, the tall man still dwarfed by the 3-meter sculpture of chrome and blades and thorns. Neither the colonel nor the killing machine moved as they regarded one another from less than a meter's distance. I looked back at the simulacra display. The Pax ship embers were closing fast. Above us the containment field cleared. "Take my hand, Raul," said Aenea. I took her hand, remembering all of the other times I had touched it in the last 10 standard years. "The stars," she whispered. "Look up at the stars and listen to them." Oh, hey, thanks for tuning in, Textual. Just as a heads up, Books category is the title of a dead game. The category you may be looking for is Writing and Reading. Awesome community. I will get that taken care of. Thank you. Killer voice, by the way. I'm frequently the only viewer in this category to keep a lookout periodically. Oh, that is a good idea. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I will tweak that. That is a Twitch thing. Oh god, I set that setting ages ago. I'll have to fiddle around and see if I can do that manually now. That should be doable. I'll do that probably through Twitch itself. Should be fine. Thank you. I do appreciate that. I'll poke around with that once I finish this chapter here. The tree ship Yggdrasil hung in low orbit around an orange-red world with white polar caps, ancient volcanoes larger than my world's Pinion Plateau, and a river valley running for more than 5,000 kilometers like an appendectomy scar around the world's belly. "This is Mars," said Aenea. "Colonel Cassad will leave us here." The colonel had come down from his close regard of the Shrike after the quantum shift jump. There was no word or phrase for what we did. One moment the tree ship was in the biosphere system,
coasting at low velocity, drives dead, under attack by a swarm of archangels, and the next instant we were in low and stable orbit around this dead world in old Earth system. "How did you do that?" I had asked Aenea a second after she had done it. I'd had no doubt whatsoever that she had shifted us there. "I learned to hear the music of the spheres," she said, "and then to take a step." I kept staring at her. I was still holding her hand. I had no plans to release it until she spoke to me in plain language. "One can understand a place, Raul," she said, knowing that so many others were undoubtedly listening at that moment. "And when you do, it's like hearing the music of it. Each world a different chord. Each star system a different sonata. Each specific place a clear and distinct note." I did not release her hand. "And the farcasting without a farcaster?" I said. Aenea nodded. "A free casting. A quantum leap in the real sense of the term," she said. "Moving in the macro universe the way an electron moves in the infinitely micro. Taking a step with the help of the void which binds." I was shaking my head. "Energy? Where does the energy come from, kiddo? Nothing comes from nothing. But everything comes from everything. What does that mean, Aenea?" She pulled her fingers from mine, but She pulled her fingers from mine, but touched my cheek. "Remember our discussion long, long ago about the Newtonian physics of love? Love is an emotion, kiddo, not a form of energy. It's both, Raul. It truly is. And it is the only key to unlocking the universe's greatest supply of energy." "Are you talking about religion?" I said, half furious at either her opacity or my denseness, or both. "No," she said. "I'm talking about quasars deliberately ignited, about pulsars tamed, about exploding cores of galaxies tapped for energy like steam turbines. I'm talking about an engineering project 2.5 billion years old and barely begun." I could only stare. She shook her head. "Later, my love. For now, understand that farcasting without a farcaster really works. There were never any real farcasters, never any magical doors opening onto different worlds. Only the Technocore's perversion of this form of the Void's second most wonderful gift." I should have said, "What is the Void's first most wonderful gift?" But I assumed then that it was the learning the language of the dead recording of sentient races' memories. My mother's voice, to be more precise. But what I did say then was, "So this is how you moved Rachel and Theo and you from world to world without time debt?" "Yes." "And took the consul's ship from Tien Shan system to Biosphere with no Hawking drive?" "Yes." I was about to say, "and travel to whatever world where you met your lover, were married, and had a child," but the words would not form. "This is Mars," she said next, filling the silence. "Colonel Kassad will leave us here." The tall warrior stepped to Aenea's side. Rachel came closer, stood on her tiptoes, and kissed him. "Someday you will be called Moneta," Kassad said softly, "and we will be lovers." "Yes," said Rachel, and stepped back. Aenea took the tall man's hand. He was still in quaint battle garb, the assault rifle held comfortably in the crook of his arm. Smiling slightly, the colonel looked up at the highest platform where the Shrike still stood, the blood light of Mars on his carapace. "Raul," said Aenea, "will you come as well?" I took her other hand. The wind was blowing sand into my eyes, and I could not breathe. Aenea handed me an osmosis mask, and I slipped mine on as she set hers in place. The sand was red, the rocks were red, and the sky was a stormy pink. We were standing in a dry river valley bounded by rocky cliffs. The riverbed was strewn with boulders, some as big as the consul's ship.
Colonel Kassad pulled on the helmet cowl of his combat suit, and static rasped in our comthread pickups.
Where I started, he said, in the Tharsis relocation slums, a few hundred clicks in that direction.
He gestured toward where the sun hung low and small above the cliffs. The suited figure, ominous in its size and bulk, the heavy assault weapon looking anything but obsolete here on the plane of Mars, turned toward Aenea.
What would you have me do, woman?
Aenea spoke in the crisp, quick, sure syllables of command. The Pax has retreated from Mars and Old Earth system temporarily because of the Palestinian uprising here and the resurgence of the Martian war machine in space. There is nothing strategic enough to hold them here now while their resources are stretched so thin. Kassad nodded. But they'll be back, said Aenea, back in force, not just to pacify Mars, but to occupy the entire system. She paused to look around. I followed her gaze and saw the dark human figures moving down the boulder field toward us. They carried weapons. You must keep them out of the system, Colonel, said my friend. Do whatever you must. Sacrifice whomever you must. But keep them out of Old Earth system for the next 5 standard years. I have never heard Aenea sound so adamant or ruthless.
5 standard years,
said Colonel Kassad. I could see his thin smile behind the cowl visor.
No problem. If it was 5 Martian years, I might have to strain a bit.
Aenea smiled. The figures were moving closer through the blowing sand. You'll have to take the leadership of the Martian resistance movement, she said, her voice deadly serious. Take it any way you can.
I will,
said Kassad, and the firmness in his voice matched Aenea's. Consolidate the various tribes and warrior factions, said Aenea.
I will.
Form a more permanent alliance with the war machine spacers. Kassad nodded. The figures were less than 100 meters away now. I could see weapons raised. Protect Old Earth, said Aenea. Keep the Pax away at all costs. I was shocked. Colonel Kassad must have been surprised as well.
You mean Old Earth system, he said.
Aenea shook her head. Old Earth, Fedman. Keep the Pax away. You have approximately a year to consolidate control of the entire system. Good luck. The two shook hands.
Your mother was a fine, brave woman, said the colonel. I valued her friendship.
And she valued yours. The dark figures were moving closer, keeping to the cover of boulders and dunes. Colonel Kassad walked toward them, his right hand high, the assault weapon still easy in his arm. Aenea came closer and took my hand again. It's cold, isn't it, Raul? It was. There was a flash of light like a painless blow to the back of one's head, and we were on the bridge platform of the Yggdrasil. Our friends backed away at the sight of our appearance. The fear of magic dies hard in a species. Mars had turned red and cold beyond our branches and containment field.
What course, Reverend One who teaches?
Said Het Mastine. Just turn outward to where we can clearly see the stars, said Aenea.
And that is where we will call it for today. When I know my schedule for next week, I'll mention it. I really have to get around... Okay, tell you what. We're hitting the end of the month pretty soon. I will be doing the update of the playlists on the YouTubes. TXTUL, textual. If you want to see any of these recorded, that's where they all are. They are unedited there. I have them arrayed in playlists. Generally on a per book or per series basis. Let's see. Christopher DW on YouTube says, had a seance this week and met Douglas Adams. He's cool with you doing Hitchhiker's Guide. He said he's a fan of your work. Well, if he says it's okay, and you're listening to the voices of the dead and the voices of the living, and possibly can hear the music of the spheres, well, I guess I might not have any choice. Of course, I'll have to do a reread of them on my own time,
and get them situated in my noggin parts, my brain elements. Okay, so let's pop onto Twitch here. Ah, here we go. That's where it is. All right, I can do that. I'll do that later. Let me... What is that? Writing... Reading simulator. That's close. Reading fun. Tarot reading. Right. Let's try writing and reading. Writhing. Writing and reading. Why is that not popping up? Huh. Ah, there it is. Staring me in the face. I'm blind. Saved. Can I do the same thing? I've got, so for YouTube categories, I've got, the one I've got it set to now is education. They've definitely added more of these now, which is nice. Science and technology, not quite. Documentary, no. Action adventure, that would be very specific genre stuff. Trailers, shows, shorts, thrillers, sci-fi, fantasy, horror, foreign. I'll leave it on education, although it's really more entertainment, for lack of a better category. Anyway. Yeah, so that'll be it for today. Once I know my schedule, I'll post it on the Discord. Fortunately, Discord saw the massive outcry against having the whole facial recognition security thing, and have at least pushed that off, if not removed it, to later in this year. What this translates to, in my mind, is they will shadow at it, and hope that after the hype is all, or the hype, after the kerfuffle is blown over and people have forgotten, and just shadow at it. When that happens, hopefully there will be some progress on a viable alternative. I don't really do the social media thing. Discord maybe counts. It's easy and convenient for me to work with. I may just sack up and cobble together a website at some point. I've been saying something along those lines for years. I'm too lazy. It's not hard. I've done it before. I just have to, like, it's old atrophied muscles that I will have to flex. And I'll get around to that when I get around to it. Yeah, so other than that, hope people are enjoying. We've got probably 2 more installments at a guess. Yeah, I think 2 more is probably about right. 2 more installments. It's going to be some good stuff. We're going to see how Raul ends up where he ends up. And possibly where he goes from there. Anyway, thanks to everyone who tuned in. There were a whole passel of you today. I appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed. That's it. I won't ever ask you to like or subscribe or any of that. Do that if you want to. I'm not going to tell you. You do it for your own edification at that point. I'm not terribly concerned about the algorithm. Oh, yeah. Derby Shark says, I read somewhere that they are considering using AI analysis of your messages to estimate your age. Yep, they are. I've heard that as well. I don't know if they're actually doing that yet. I would not be surprised if Meta and Grok already kind of do this in order to algorithmically push more things your way. Basically, Discord is in the middle stages of terminal enshittification. It's like well on its way, but it isn't quite terminal yet. I'd say it could reverse course if I had any faith in the people who own Discord to reverse course. I don't think it's going to happen. So I'm hoping for a viable alternative that is at an earlier point in the enshittification curve. Hopefully soon, because I know searches for an alternative to Discord went up a drastic amount in the wake of the announcement that they were going to do all that. So I'm not thrilled. I'm obviously very unhappy. But Discord is very easy for me to locate people and send people files and all that. Mostly, like, nobody I don't think has requested anything beyond Echopraxia, which I don't have on my YouTube because it's where I had my one real close call with copyright strike issues. At least with regards to the material I was reading. I don't know if Peter Watts himself was involved. His name is mentioned, but I believe it was just the audiobook company that had an audiobook of Echopraxia, and they were not thrilled. Suffice it to say, I have that, my recording of that on the, what's it called? On the Discord, that's available to get. It is in shitification all the way down. I will be reading that aloud this year. I wanted to read it like the day it came out, but then I learned shortly beforehand that Cory Doctorow had done his own audiobook reading of it, and so I urge people to go for that instead. And I would give it some time. It is well worth it. It is a dynamite primer. An absolutely dynamite primer on where we are right now, or as of like half a year ago to a year ago, with regards to, how did we get here? What can we do about it? What are the symptoms of enshittification? And all told very cogently and very easy for a layman to pick up, even someone like, say, my mother, who is not really in tune with the internet. She's like, oh, that's what's going on. This all makes sense. I'm like, yes, thank you. Thank you, Cory Doctorow. She understands. So it's a good time. It's good times. So we'll probably be, I plan on getting around to that this year, probably around the 1-year anniversary. For our more immediate future, as I've mentioned time and time again, we're going to get through the Rise of Endymion. I'll do something else right after that, and then after that, I will be moving on to XIII by C.J. Cherryh. And its sequel, Regenesis. Regenesis, yes. Which are kind of biggies that I have been building towards for a while now with a bunch of the other Alliance Union books. I did want to take time to build up to Down Below Station. Down Below Station is central to the setting. It's very important because it basically primes the setting to occur in the way that it does, where you have the Merchanter Alliance. You've got, technically, Earth is a power of its own, but it's minor to irrelevant at that point. It's provincial for all intents and purposes. And then you have Union, who is not in active conflict with the Merchanter Alliance, but it's kind of they're in an uneasy detente. At the end of Down Below Station, it's like, we can benefit a lot more by trading with each other than by worrying about what Earth wants. We can benefit more by not killing each other off, basically. Our economic interests are aligned. XIII deals very firmly with Union. Mostly it's been Alliance and Alliance adjacent stuff, as well as some people in the Earth sphere before the war really kicks into gear. That I've read up until now. XIII is going to be one of our biggest glimpses of how Union operates. 40,000 at Gehenna was kind of our first big taster. There's a bit of the politicking that's occurring there. XIII is like all politics all the time. And kind of just a big insight on, so what would this somewhat different society be like? We're going to have a lot of characters. Only a few that we're going to focus really hard on, but we'll be getting there. I'm getting ahead of myself, of course. We still have a few installments of Endymion to get through. The Rise of Endymion, whatever. But I'm pretty hyped. XIII, I think, is actually the first thing I ever knowingly read by C.J. Cherryh. There might have been another one. I know it was not Down Below Station. I didn't read Down Below Station until I'd read a couple of her other books. It is possible that I read, like, Rim Runners, or... I don't think it was Tri-Point. I might have read Rim Runners and maybe Merchanter's Luck before XIII. But to my knowledge, XIII is the first thing I knowingly read by her and recognized as, oh, I'm reading this book by a woman named C.J. Cherryh, or an author named C.J. Cherryh. And it altered me irrevocably. It's pretty good. Like, it has some ideas. It has some ideas. Anyway. With that, I'm going to leave you all until the next time I see you in a couple days. Whenever that winds up being, I'll post whatever the schedule is on the Discord, and probably this will be the last stream of the month that we're on right now. I might have one Saturday, I don't know yet. Weekends are weird. Weekends are dicey for me. But we'll see. Anyway, until next time, stay safe, stay sane, be decent to each other. Toodaloo.